Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. As most of you probably know, I started this series of videos to expose the lie that Elliot Rodger was connected to the men's rights movement. But I am now expanding it to cover any falsehoods, misconceptions, misinformation, or outright lies spread about the MRM. So let's get stuck into it.
Once upon a time, I was a very, very bad boy. I was a liberal and a feminist, and I believed in equal rights.
No, I'm guessing, you believe that, you believed in equal rights. I'm guessing you never gave any consideration to men's issues, and no doubt still don't. That's why I am here, to give you enough rope. Next.
Things are much different for me now. Yes, indeed they are. I've actually joined the MRA. When I look at, beefcakes, like Corpse Killer 666.
Yeah, the thing is, War Corpse 666 isn't an MRA. In fact, he's made anti-MRA videos before.
I'm gonna go full bore in this video and just say I have not done exhaustive research, but I do have a cursory knowledge of what I'm talking about, and I'm finally going to go after the MRAs. They really have not appeared on my radar much, as much as I criticize feminism, but, a bunch of people have asked me to talk about them, so fine, I'll talk about them. There are some things that I know they say, like custody battle and divorce battles, that I happen to agree with. But then again, there's some shit feminists say that I happen to agree with as well. So, go figure that shit out. I'll give you an example of how they're almost just as bad as feminists. It's just they're feminists with dicks. They're malists. We're not the gender that becomes fucking pregnant. Sorry, MRAs, but you got no dog in this fight. Now, if you want to talk about financial divorce or opting out, well, I'm very sorry, but we already have laws on the fucking book that do that. It's called giving up your parental rights. After that, you're not responsible for the kid. At all, in any way, shape, or form. Unless I'm totally wrong about that, in which case, feel free to fucking nail me in the comments, because Lord knows everybody that watches my shit fucking is not shy about speaking up.
He's an anti-feminist, and not all anti-feminists are MRAs. But I'm not surprised you got that wrong, considering you didn't even get his name right. Next.
I realized there's something missing from my life. And what that is pretty much lack of sex. I have actually stopped having sex since joining the MRAs.
Oh look, he's trying to use shaming language. How cute. What a shame he couldn't come up with a real argument. Next.
And now, my chances of being falsely accused of rape have dropped significantly.
Actually, you don't need to have sex with someone to be falsely accused. For example, from the Daily Mail. The woman who accused a stranger she found on Facebook of rape, and how it ruined her victim's life. Given everything he has been through, one wonders how Philip McDonald can even bring himself to look at Facebook. True, he's hyper-conscious about his security settings, but then, so would you be if you'd endured what he has over the past 2 years. For Philip, a polite and quietly spoken 26-year-old father of one, was plucked out of the blue by a total stranger who spotted his picture on the social networking site and decided to falsely accuse him of rape. In an act of inexplicable viciousness, 31-year-old fantasist Lindsay Attridge chanced upon a photograph of Philip and his then 14-year-old brother James and used it to back up a story she'd concocted. She'd done it, apparently, in order to win some sympathy with her boyfriend, when she feared his affections were waning. It led to Philip, a wholly innocent chef, being harassed in the street and shunned at the school gates. He is still fighting, 2 years later, to salvage his battered reputation. Philip, speaking for the first time to the Mail, still struggles to articulate the true horror of what happened to him. "It's frightening," he says. "We have no idea why she picked on us." It is Philip's partner Kelly Fraser, 27, who describes their experience. "It was like our lives were a deck of cards and someone just threw the whole lot up in the air, and that was our lives for 2 years," she says. "We have only just started to pick up the pieces now." It was only 2 weeks ago that Lindsay, a single mother, appeared at Aberdeen Sheriff Court, where she admitted a charge of wasting police time. And her punishment for a callous deceit that besmirched the names of 2 innocent young men? A risible 200 hours of community service and a social services supervision order. Neither she, nor the police, have apologized to Philip or James. Now, you are faced with 2 choices here. The first is to come to the conclusion that this woman should face appropriate punishment for her actions. If you choose this option, your thinking is in fact in line with that of men's rights activists. If on the other hand, you choose the second option, which is to conclude she shouldn't face any kind of punishment, then not only are you against equality, but you are in fact a cunt. Next.
That's always a plus, because we all know for a fact, scientifically proven, that most rape accusations are false.
Here we go again. Around 8% of claims are proven false, and around 6% are proven true, using feminist statistics. That would mean, logically, that 86% are neither proven true, nor proven false. In other words, they are unknown, as I have explained in detail in the last 2 installments in this series. Coincidentally, while doing some research yesterday for another video, I came across this particular article which almost sums up my position perfectly. How many rape reports are false? How many women falsely accuse men of rape? A lot of statistics are floating around the internet. 2% say many feminists, the same as other crimes. 25% say other groups who quarrel with the feminists on many issues, or maybe 40%. Here's the real answer: we don't know. Anyone who insists that we do know should be corrected or ignored. The number of false accusations is what statisticians call a dark number, that is, there is a true number, but it is unknown, and perhaps unknowable. For a deep dive into the reasons it's so hard to know, I commend you to Kathy Young's new piece at Slate, in which she details all the problems that confound investigations into false rape accusations. Here's what we do know: the 2% number is very bad and should never be cited. It apparently traces its lineage back to Susan Brownmiller's legendary Against Our Will, and her citation for this figure is a single speech by an appellate judge before a small group of lawyers. His source for this statistic was a single area of New York that started having police women conduct all rape interviews. This is not data. It is an anecdote about an anecdote. The 41% number beloved of men's rights activists is better. It involves a peer-reviewed study by Eugene Kennan of a police department in some unknown small city. False reports could only be declared if the victim herself withdrew the charge. However, we're talking about one city, in which 109 rapes were examined over a period of 9 years. As feminists point out, victims might have withdrawn the charges simply because they found it too traumatic to engage with the police department, not because the accusation was false. And the study itself is now pretty elderly. A lot has changed in 20 years, including, possibly, the number of false rape accusations in the city and the rest of the nation. This number should be used only with grave caution. But so should any other numbers, such as the 8% figure that is commonly attributed to the FBI. When you dig into the research itself, you find it is often heavily inflected with the author's prior beliefs about what constitutes the real problem, unreported cases of rape or false reports. So Kennan is frequently chided for accepting the results of a police department investigation that included offering the victims a polygraph, because this is intimidating for true victims as well as women making false reports, and it could raise the incidence of false negatives. On the other hand, if the rate of false rape reports is quite high, much higher than that of other crimes, then this might be a reasonable precaution. It's possible that by encouraging police departments not to polygraph rape victims, we have fixed a cruel system in which innocent victims are bullied into recanting. It's also possible that we've increased the number of false accusations that proceed to investigation and conviction. Shorter, you cannot treat percentage of reports that were found to be false by investigators as percentage of reports that were actually false. Some women may simply have recanted to disengage from the system. Some police officers may decide a case was false when it wasn't. On the other hand, we also know that false accusations can make their way through the system pretty far, witness the Duke lacrosse players and Brian Banks. What we know is that we don't know. We should not presume that every rape victim is telling the truth because it would make it easier for victims to come forward. Nor should we presume that every rape accusation has a 50% chance of being false. We should look at the facts in each case and judge them with the knowledge that some women do lie about rape, for revenge, to cover up some problem in their own lives, to get attention and sympathy from others. And also with the knowledge that men lie, too, violating their victims a second time in order to cover up their crimes. And that while men have gone to jail for rapes they did not commit, many other men have avoided the jail time they deserved for terrible crimes against women. That's not a very satisfying answer, because rape is inherently a hard crime to prosecute. If someone comes into a police station with their face bashed in, you can be pretty much certain that unless they're a professional boxer, a crime has occurred. If a rape kit shows evidence of sexual intercourse, however, all that tells you is that something happened. Because this is something that a lot of people do to each other voluntarily, you cannot proceed immediately to the arrest. Usually there are only two witnesses, telling different stories. Often drugs or alcohol were involved, and intoxicated people make lousy witnesses. We don't want that to be true. Rape is an especially heinous crime, and heinously unfair. It is mostly something that stronger men do to weaker women. How can we pile on an extra dose of unfairness, by failing to prosecute so many of the crimes? Feminists would like to rectify that unfairness by treating rape accusations as presumptively true, making it easier for victims to come forward. That's understandable. But there's a risk that this makes it easier for false accusations to get through the system, resulting in destroyed lives for men such as Brian Banks. Men's rights activists would like to make it harder for innocent men to get caught in a web of lies, so they want rape accusations to be interrogated with deep suspicion. But treating rape victims as possible or likely liars may make it harder for them to go forward, leaving rapists free to stalk their next victim. No one wants to openly advocate for a hard choice that will end in injustice for someone. So instead we get the war of bad statistics, with each side claiming certainty when all we really have are dark crimes and dark numbers. I've got to say, that's pretty spot on if you ask me. Next.
We know this. We know for a fact, like I said, we know this shit. I've read statistics that say up to 95% of rape allegations are false.
Considering in the vast majority of cases, as I have just shown, the validity of rape claims are unknown, therefore potentially the number of false rape claims could be over 90%. Of course, this is extremely unlikely, but is statistically possible. Personally, I don't believe the percentage to be that high.
Most men just haven't been proven innocent when it comes to charges of rape and molestation. We know these things.
No, actually, the problem is the automatic assumption of guilt, based on nothing else than an accusation. Or are you unfamiliar with the concept of innocent until proven guilty? Next.
Also, when it comes to male power, the thing is, people say, like, men have, like, 90% of, control over the planet and, like, politics and things like that.
Define power? And a citation for this 90% figure would be nice, because it smells like you just pulled it from your arse. Fuck, now I'm going to have to open a window.
But let me ask you, this is kind of a parallel here. Venomfang X basically put out the question of, we'll just say you know half of the things in the universe. What if that half that you don't know is what contains God? And which I bring up, what if the 10% of control that men have, I mean, or rather don't have, what if that's, you know, the 10% that you want? So shouldn't it just be 100%? Wouldn't that make more sense? I mean, what if like, you want some kind of control? Like, if your girlfriend, wife, fiance, whatever, or just some girl, she doesn't want to have sex, but you really want to have sex with her. You know, you want it more than she doesn't want it. So it would make sense that, you know, you should just be able to fuck her, right? It makes sense. Now,
okay, so he started off by using the no sex for MRAs shaming language. But now shifted to, MRAs want to rape their wives and girlfriends. Wow. Have a guess how many actual men's issues he's discussed so far? Next.
the thing is, since joining the MRM, I see people like Paul Elam, they ask for money. It's basically alimony, but it makes more sense, because with alimony, it's bullshit. You know, like, why should a wife have to keep on getting money to have a certain lifestyle? That doesn't make any sense. But him, I mean, he was doing things for us, men, for years. So now that he's not making as much money, it would make more sense that he should be able to support a certain lifestyle. So
I have to say, his attempted analogy between alimony and making donations is just weird. I'm not sure exactly what to say about that, apart from that it would seem that he doesn't understand the difference between being forced against your will to pay someone for years, and making a donation of your own free will. It's just strange. He also seems to be unaware of the large number of feminists taking donations over the net. And to be honest, I don't have a problem with either side asking for donations, as long as those who donate do it of their own free will. Speaking of which, once again, a big thanks to my Patreon supporters. Next.
actually, I'm raising money now. So you can either give your money to them or give it to me, and I'll give it to men. So to do this, go to brotherswithvoices.co.kl and give money there, or call 1-800-MEN, and that's with an exclamation point there. Call that and give some of your money, because these guys are actually going to be supporting men's rights. This is a real legal organization. So, I mean, if we're gonna, do this, because, feminists, we've seen how they fuck everything up. They talk about nothing but rape culture and fucking all this other shit.
He finally got something right.
Like patriarchy, even though, these aren't, scientifically proven or anything, so you can just disregard all of that shit. So,
I know he thinks he's being sarcastic, but ironically, he's speaking the truth.
Either give your money to them, or give it to me, and I'll make sure that men get it. Especially homeless men. I mean, because you really rarely see homeless women. And to me, that just shows a clear fucking bias when it comes to the economy.
I think that's kicking a dead man, quite frankly. Some months ago, I did a piece on homelessness, which is overwhelmingly a male problem. A social worker wrote in to say, she emailed me to say that she works that she works with the homeless, and if a homeless woman comes to her on a Friday, she has to give her clothes, money, food, and accommodation. If a man comes in on a Friday, he's sent back out on the street with nothing. I mean, are we really surprised that today, for every woman who commits suicide, 3.5 men will?
Women don't have to be homeless. They don't have to really do anything, and they'll just be supported. So, again, go to that website or call the number and give your money to them. And to me, this makes the most fucking rational sense. This is the real deal here.
This series is often very serious, and no doubt makes many of you angry. And considering some of the bullshit I deal with, that's a perfectly natural reaction. But I came across this debate, and had to share it. As I thought it was hilarious. The debate was between someone, who clearly is an idiot, and a troll. It starts with the question: women's rights first need to be higher than men's rights to become equal to men's rights. This of course ignores the fact that women have more rights than men, but let's have a look at the reasoning. Pro starts with, "Hello. This is my first debate, so please keep it in mind. So, what I'm trying to argue is that for women's rights to be equal to men's rights, women have to have more rights. Rules, keep it sophisticated. Attempt to understand what the other is trying to say, that goes for me, too. I look forward to my first debate." Khan responded, "I am not going to forget that this is your first debate." Pro replied, "Thank you for accepting my debate. Here are my arguments. 1. Women are so much lower than men that if we strive to give them more rights, we will eventually get them equal anyways. 2. A woman should get paid more than a man if the woman is pregnant, gave birth. An example of this is, let's say a man and a woman get paid the same for working the same job. Let's say that the woman got married then had a child, the woman would have to stay home to take care of the child, or she may have to stay home because of other reasons concerning her pregnancy. The man would eventually get paid more. A few notes: I do not think men should become as low as women are currently. I simply believe that to get women's rights equal, they need more rights. I am male. I'm hoping the person making the pro argument is very young. He sounds like he is. Unfortunately he started to drink the poison Kool-Aid at a young age, and will probably be writing hit pieces for Jezebel in 10 years, about how his penis makes him evil. But anyway, let's see Khan's response. Your arguments are very naive and unreasonable, probably because it is your first debate. 1. Women are not equal, they are inferior to men. 2. Women deserve to be paid lower than men because women are inferior. No doubt Khan's arguments will now be used by man-boobs to justify the public execution of all suspected MRAs. Pro responds. 1. Women are not equal, they are inferior to men. I am confused by this statement. Are you referring to physical capability or social structure? Because if you mean by social structure, that is exactly what I am trying to say. 2. Women deserve to be paid lower than men because women are inferior. You gave absolutely no reasoning explanation for this. I'm afraid I can't argue something that doesn't have anything to argue, Cupcake. Khan responds. Women are both intellectually and physically inferior to men. They are also satanic and evil. Pro replies. Okay, well, I had suspicions before, but now it's confirmed. I kinda sorta wanted to start a specific argument, so thank you for trolling me, Cupcake. Khan says. Your irrationality strikes me as odd. Pro's final remark is, whatever. Goodbye, Cupcake. And Khan has the final word with, you're gay, therefore you're evil. Clearly a titanic battle of wits, of epic proportions. How will anything in this series ever top it, I wonder? Okay, now that we are done with the lols, let's move on to something a little more serious. I found this interesting article on disinformation.com, but it was originally published on Thought Catalog. It's titled, I Thought I Was a Feminist Until I Started Dating a Men's Rights Activist. It says, I didn't know what a men's rights activist was until I fell in love with one. He didn't know I was a feminist until our first big argument. Every couple went through one, but I doubt any of them had one based on something as petty as ours. My boyfriend is a cis white male of European descent. He is 6'7", barely fits through a doorframe, listens to indie music and enjoys video games more than puppies. I grew up in a third world country and am currently studying overseas, where I met him through a mutual. I am a feminist because in my country, patriarchy is rampant, child brides are aplenty, and street harassment is commonplace. My boyfriend is an MRA because after objectively comparing the issues of both genders in a first world context, he finds that the male activists need more support in fighting for their issues. When I saw him scrolling through Reddit's infamous men's rights for the first time, he had to explain to me what an MRA was. He didn't, and never has, labeled himself as an MRA, but I did. He is a self-proclaimed gender egalitarian, and believes in the equality of both sexes. He often reiterates that feminism is the best thing since sliced bread, but developing countries are in need of it much more than his own, and female oppression is no longer something to be dealt with in many nations. Before I met him, I was part of the Tumblr Feminists. I was a hardcore, misogynist-hating feminist who swallows whatever text post pops up on my dashboard. I question nothing. A woman earns 77 cents to every dollar a man makes? How dare they? Women don't have the rights to their own bodies? Those cishet males at it again. Women are being victim-blamed? Motherfucking shitlords. I believed everything I read because Tumblr feminists are the most passionate people out there. And trust me, it's hard refuting a claim made when it's in a funny text post on my dashboard. I thought everything there were cold hard facts. Fun fact, they're not. So many of the statistics used by feminists are either outdated, warped, or completely bazoink. It wasn't until my boyfriend told me about the lack of men's rights that I began to open my mind to the idea that men aren't perfect creatures. Men, just like women, face issues at home, at work, and in the law. It's just that whenever they try to raise awareness of a gender-specific problem, many extreme feminists belittle it and sweep it under the rug. It's a competition of who has the bigger scar, and feminists will always win simply because they paint themselves as the perpetual victim. When my boyfriend was sexually assaulted when he was drunk, he didn't know what to call it. He was underage, and she was in her early 20s. It was clearly statutory rape, but he never realized that it was because a woman sexually assaulting a boy is difficult to comprehend, even today. Many men who experienced something similar would be given congratulatory pats on the back, or asked if they enjoyed it. Because men always want sex, right? Ironically, my boyfriend works at a female-dominated industry. By that I mean during his previous internship, he was the only male there, so it's slightly more difficult for him to break into the industry. He recently showed me a group picture of the people in his previous office, and there were literally, I repeat, literally, no men in the entire office. And it's not even a job that requires a vagina. If my boyfriend isn't suited for the job, at least one man in this entire nation should be. He gave me proof of laws that work in favor of women, and there is a lot, and how men's rights are so often misunderstood, that MRAs are seen as this misogynistic assholes. I've read terrible stories of women who went out with MRAs or being abused by them. But throughout our relationship, he has never violated or harassed me in any way. He equally does the cooking and cleaning of the house, and cooks better than me, I might add. He's the one who will move overseas once I graduate university. He's the one who will convert to my religion in order to marry me in a church. He's the one who loves his mother more than I love mine. I have never seen a kinder, more beautiful human being than the man sitting across from me. My MRA boyfriend taught me about equality. He showed me the horrid things extreme feminists have done and are continuing to do. He proved that misandry exists. He brought to the table concepts about gender that I would never have learned if it weren't for his belief in men's rights. He grounded me and fed me with real facts that support his movement. MRAs, just like feminists, fight for the equality of the sexes, it's just that we call it different things. But a rose by any other name still smells as sweet. We are all humans fighting for the same cause. The labels are not a strict dichotomy. There are extremists in both groups the same way there are extremists in every religion or movement, but to dismiss all MRAs as power-hungry patriarchs is as foolish as calling all feminists bra-burning misogynists. Sure, we have our arguments about which gender has it worse. Spoiler alert, if you're talking on a global scale, it's women, but all in all, my boyfriend understands the word no better than many women. He still pays for dinner sometimes, but understands that I should return the favor, too. Many feminists shouldn't dismiss the plights of men because that isn't what equality is. Listen to what they have to say, and like me, you'll see that these straight white males are not villains at all, but just humans struggling in several facets of this gender-obsessed world. Interesting story, right? Well, all of you should know by now that I'm a skeptic at heart, and don't take things at face value. I also have a pretty good bullshit detector. And there were a couple of things about this article which made me question it. For example, if Jasmine was a Tumblr feminist, she should have heard of men's rights activists. It's possible that she hadn't, but probably not all that likely. So it occurred to me this could be a propaganda piece from our side, as something about it sounded a little too convenient, a little too contrived. So I did a quick search on the internet, and found that Jasmine does in fact appear to be an actual person, and actually living in my home city of Melbourne. Hello Jasmine, if you are watching. So for now I'm going to assume it's legit. But we should be willing to question everything, even those things that support our position. One thing that makes it so hard to reason with many feminists is their confirmation bias. We should be careful of falling into that trap. And if the article is factual, then Jasmine should be respected for her open-mindedness. One more thing. As I said before, I originally found this article on disinformation.com. And I got into a bit of a discussion in the comments section. My list of the different types of female genital mutilation also fractured off into a different conversation. Speaking of male genital mutilation. Next. From something called Sika Mika Nika blogs, which it seems is about politics, social justice and mirth. Well, this sounds interesting. The profile of the author reads: The adventures of a sore, cross-feminist socialist dancing awkwardly through life, studies, politics and motherhood in inner-city Sydney. The article is titled, Making Circumcision a Men's Rights Issue is a Mistake. Interesting title. Well, considering male circumcision violates the rights of men and boys, I would think it's safe to assume that it is, in fact, a men's rights issue. But apparently we are about to be told we are wrong. Let's get stuck into it. As someone who's been opposed to male circumcision for many years, I was somewhat startled to see a new voice in the debate recently. Men's rights groups claiming that it's feminism's fault that cutting baby boys' genitals is not taken as seriously as when it happens to girls. It's frequently said that you can't compare female genital mutilation to male circumcision, mainly by people from cultures where male circumcision is normalized, and not wanting to carry on the idea that if the latter is okay, the former must not be so bad either. Actually, there are a lot of us who think both are pretty terrible. Okay, first off, I'll give her credit for acknowledging that both are bad, fair's fair. But the issue with feminists is that not all of them would agree with her. There are many feminists who admit that it's wrong, that it's a human rights violation, yet dismiss it as unimportant. Even worse are those feminists who spread false information about its health benefits, or actively promote it as they prefer the way it looks. And these feminists are actively standing in the way of those of us who would like to see it banned. What the author of this blog should be doing, if she really is against male genital mutilation, is working with us. We could hardly criticize feminists if a good proportion of them stood with us. We could hardly criticize the good ones, if they openly opposed the bad ones. Yet instead, what we get is circling the wagons, and those supposedly against it, protecting those who are for it, or those who just don't give a shit. Next. Not according to the men's rights movement though. It's feminists who have trivialized and stifled debate on circumcision, and the idea is getting airtime not just on MRA forums, but in the mainstream media, such as this article from the UK's Telegraph, where the writer blames acceptance of circumcision on the world of nitwit feminism in which males are of no consequence at all. If, therefore, boys and men could be seen to suffer some adversity solely by reason of their gender, the entire canonical edifice of feminism might wobble on its foundation stones. Okay, so let's have a look at the article in question. As she noted, it's from the Telegraph, and is titled, "It's Time for a Proper Debate on Circumcision." A third of the global male population has been circumcised, but isn't it time we asked why the procedure is still being carried out, asks Neil Linden. I would think that our feminist blog writer would agree with the title of the article, if she is anti-circumcision. But let's read on and find the bits about feminism she finds so objectionable. Neil Linden writes, "Now you might say, oh, that's different. Or, give me a break. Is this some kind of joke? People of a certain disposition will sneer, this must be just about blokes and their silly willies. And everybody knows how worked up men get about their todgers, don't they? You can't pretend that snipping off a scrap of redundant skin on a boy's putz is equivalent to a clitoridectomy on an adolescent girl. The first is merely a ceremonial nicety, like baptism. The second is a barbaric outrage. Welcome to the world of nitwit feminism in which males are of no consequence at all. Welcome, in particular, to the world of Lynn Featherstone, the Liberal Democrat MP and Minister in the Department for International Development. At the last Lib Dem conference, Ms. Featherbrain spoke about FGM, saying, it's a practice that has been going 4,000 years and, without wishing to be crude about this, quite frankly if it was boys' willies that were being cut off without anesthetic it wouldn't have lasted 4 minutes, let alone 4,000 years. Okay, I seem to have found the reason why feminism gets criticism from MRAs, when it comes to the topic of male genital mutilation. Strange our anti-circumcision feminist blog writer didn't quote this part, or criticize Lynn Featherstone. But let's continue. Would you believe that Lynn Featherstone was brought up in a Jewish family? How, then, can she be capable of coming out with such half-baked poppycock? The same question applies to our society at large. It applies to our noble Prime Minister. There he was last week, having pasted on his best pious padre mask, sharing a stage at the Girl Summit with Malala Yousafzai and prating on the supposed connections between his own young daughters and girls in the wider world who suffer ritual genital mutilation, as if. Not one word did he speak on the ritual cutting of baby boys' genitals. And we can be absolutely certain that it would not have crossed his mind, or, rather, the minds of his speechwriters and handlers, to utter such a word. Male ritual genital mutilation is so far off the chart it doesn't even register as a blip on the radar screen of our age. It's the barbarity that can never be named as such. And a bit further into the article, the psychological and physiological consequences and effects of male circumcision are subjects of medical debate. Some doctors claim that circumcised boys commonly exhibit the symptoms of traumatic stress disorder. And some psychiatrists claim long-term difficulties for men in relating to women after a baby boy is delivered into such cruel tortures by the mother from whom he might expect protection. Yet the practice is universal in the worlds of Judaism and Islam and is widespread across the United States, Canada and Australia. In a tiny number of cases, circumcision is effected for medical reasons, which is never true of female genital mutilation, but, like FGM, its primary purpose is to signify membership of a tribe or caste, usually felt by its members to be the elect of God. The World Health Organization recommends circumcision in some parts of Africa as a means to diminish the spread of HIV, a policy which is itself controversial, but, otherwise, no major medical organization promotes circumcision for health reasons. At least, however, a measure of discussion and argument is allowed among medical professionals. No such debate about male circumcision is permitted in wider society. Once again, all excellent points. The editor of the Evening Standard, Sarah Sands, has been conducting a non-stop campaign in that paper against FGM. This year, an online petition was organized to encourage her to consider the possibility that hacking the prepuce off the penis of a newborn baby boy was itself a form of genital mutilation. Sarah Sands has not dignified the petition with an answer. Perhaps that's because, like Lynn Featherstone, Sarah Sands is a high priest of the feminist faith which insists that, in the patriarchal order which is supposed to govern our society, all disadvantage by gender must inhere to females. The Prime Minister reverentially toes the line of that faith, as do all fellow travelers in the feminist-dominated political media establishment of our time. If, therefore, boys and men could be seen to suffer some adversity solely by reason of their gender, the entire canonical edifice of feminism might wobble on its foundation stones. And, of course, that could never be allowed. I think the article makes some very important points. Why, as a society, aren't we talking about banning male genital mutilation, as we have long since banned female genital mutilation? It's a simple question. One that anti-circumcision feminists should be asking, should be demanding an answer from the government, but instead are more interested in protecting fellow feminists from any form of criticism. About 10 years ago, when knowledge of pedophile Catholic priests hit the media, every time the topic came up on talk radio, you could bet that there would be angry Catholics ringing up demanding this topic not be talked about, as it was offensive to Catholics. This reminds me of that. If you had have asked any of those angry Catholics if they supported pedophilia, I imagine not a single one would have said yes. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee they would have been greatly insulted by such a question. Yet here they were, like clockwork, defending their faith, and pedophile priests along with it. Acting as a shield to wrongdoers, in an attempt to censor any criticism, no matter how just. Now I'm not suggest all Catholics think or act this way, or even that the majority do. Nor am I suggesting that this type of behavior is limited to Catholics, or the religiously minded. But it is a very good example of group identity taking precedence over actual victims. And that's what I suspect our anti-circumcision feminist blogger is doing here. She's more concerned about a handful of feminists being criticized, than the boys who are having their human rights violated. She also fails to mention the article from the same publication, criticizing the first. But I guess that would harm the war on feminism trope, wouldn't it? Next. Feminists apparently don't care about issues faced only by men, which is why we're in the streets every weekend demanding an end to the treatment of testicular cancer. Really, this is the angry lesbian view of feminism, that feminists cannot be wives or mothers or caring about anything except establishing a female supremacy. Not true, of course. Even the angry lesbians I know are actually pretty nice people who can't abide suffering. Well, there is a gaping hole in her logic here. Feminists not caring about male issues is different from feminists actively trying to make male issues worse. Of course, I would argue that there are feminists doing both. No, there aren't feminists in the streets trying to end treatment for testicular cancer. But there are endless examples of feminists putting females first, or only seeing female issues and pain. What was that quote from Lynn Featherstone again? It's a practice that has been going 4,000 years and, without wishing to be crude about this, quite frankly, if it was boys' willies that were being cut off without anesthetic, it wouldn't have lasted 4 minutes, let alone 4,000 years. Lynn Featherstone seems to be unaware that the foreskin is in fact part of the penis. Maybe she thinks it's just like a fingernail or something. But I think it's pretty clear that she is blind and uncaring when it comes to male issues and pain. Not to mention male human rights. Clearly not even a blip on her radar. But she's not the only example. There is the constant dismissal of male victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, or feminist attempts to widen the sentencing gap. In fact, when it comes to many feminists, the only male issue they even consider is males can express their emotions, due to patriarchy. And of course, the entirety of the male population is solely to blame for this, and the world's female population's hands are totally squeaky clean. Need I say more? Next. But I don't like the men's rights movement, and by making circumcision into an MRA issue, it runs the risk of alienating allies and supporters. The issue surrounding the intactivist movement, the right to bodily autonomy, to make one's own decisions on healthcare, that it is just wrong for the bigger, stronger person to unilaterally make decisions on behalf of the smaller, more powerless people, are also central ideals of feminism. I have seen a post on a parenting forum by a father stating that his 3-week-old son's circumcision, using an effective EMLA cream which did not prevent the boy from howling in agony, would toughen him up. Okay, so there are a couple of claims here. Let's start with the last one, about the father claiming the pain would toughen up his son. I agree with her, this is horrific. And it's just as bad as a mother getting her son circumcised, because she prefers the way it looks. There are feminists who are both for and against circumcision. Just as there are MRAs who are for and against circumcision. Just as society as a whole is split on the topic, the size of the split being dependent on the part of the world you are from. But she seems to be of the opinion that all feminists agree with her. And it's clear that they don't. She seems to be of the opinion that all feminists understand and acknowledge male pain. And it's clear that they don't. The medical community has done wonders in many parts of the world, spreading awareness of the harms of circumcision. But I'm unaware of the feminist movement ever doing such a thing. I know many feminists, on an individual level, say it's wrong. But what, as a collective, are they doing to change it? What have they done to change it? Here's an idea. Why don't those who identify as feminists, who are anti-circumcision, and those who identify as MRAs, who are anti-circumcision, and those who don't identify as either, who are anti-circumcision, all work together on this one thing, to get the job done? I think the answer can be found in her first statement in this paragraph. It reads, "But I don't like the men's rights movement." Yep, she would prefer to turn away anti-circumcision MRAs, while acting as a shield to pro-circumcision feminists. It's not hard to conclude that her unquestioning loyalty to feminism is more important to her than the health, well-being and human rights of male children. And she wonders why feminists get criticized. Next. What feminist would want that? We are against the notion that men need to be strong, impervious to pain, releasing their emotions only through alcohol and their fists. But being for the concept of bodily autonomy? Absolutely. Men's rights groups do themselves no favors hijacking the issue of circumcision. But they really hurt the little boys they're trying to protect. Wow. Where to start with this pile of horse shit? So men only release their emotions through alcohol and their fists? Wow, yeah, clearly no poisonous feminist ideology here. If you want to know why we have a problem with feminists, here it is. And no doubt she'd call herself a moderate. Yet clearly she believes the exact same bullshit as the radicals. Just further evidence that mainstream feminism is radical feminism. Oh, and just in case any feminists are watching, as a male, I'm more than capable of expressing my emotions without being drunk, or using my fists, and for the record, feminism hasn't anything to do with it. She then goes on to say, men's rights groups do themselves no favors hijacking the issue of circumcision. Are you fucking serious? Wow. Hijacking? Seriously? I'm really not sure what to say about this, it's so incredibly stupid. On the other hand, considering she's more interested in defending feminism than protecting male children, I have to ask, which group has actually done the hijacking here? Although, maybe the key to getting male circumcision banned is in this article. If we can just figure out a way to convince feminists that male circumcision is harmful to women, I have a feeling it would suddenly become a much more important issue. But unfortunately, as long as it's only harming males, even the feminists who know it's wrong, are only willing to pay the issue lip service. Well, I have a little bit of time left, but not enough for another article or video, so let's have a quick look at the MRA tag on Tumblr. And let's do it rapid fire. The men's rights movement is kinda like if a dude ran into the emergency room with a broken pinky, and then whined that the stab victim was getting treated first. No one is arguing that a broken pinky is painless, or that it doesn't deserve treatment. But yeah, I'm gonna argue that you're a dick if you put your treatment ahead of the stab victim. And here we have an example of, women's issues count, and men's don't. A better example would probably be, if a dude ran into the emergency room with a stab wound, given to him by his wife. And she avoided doing any jail time, as she claimed to be the real victim, as he didn't do the dishes, and therefore deserved to be stabbed. Next. He protected no trans boys, no men of color, no male rape survivors. But as the white knight in shining armor donned his fedora helm and saddled his horse for another day of questing and harassing women on the internet, he declared to the uncaring crowds, I'm a meninist, not a misogynist. Actually, every time I talk about the sentencing gap, I'm not only defending white men, but men of color as well, especially considering it affects them to an even greater extent. The same can be said of circumcision. This is not an issue affecting only straight white men. In fact, I often mention what the World Health Organization is doing in Africa, and how it's wrong. I could go on and on. But of course, this is just another attempt to label us as white straight homophobic racists, because they have no real arguments. Oh, and by the way, disagreeing with a woman isn't harassment. Next. I just saw an MRA post that used the phrase, the absolute lack of bodily autonomy for males in the West. I have seen a lot of MRA nonsense, but that is just incredible. Oh look, someone who doesn't understand what male circumcision is. Or maybe she just thinks only female bodily autonomy counts. What was it again the feminist said in the last segment? Next. Male privilege and entitlement means that when men feel that their role as the superior and power-holding gender is being threatened, they respond like a territorial animal, snarling, biting, and lashing out violently. If men didn't recognize, even subconsciously, that they experience gender-based privileges, opportunities and freedoms from certain forms of oppression, they wouldn't react to observations of imbalance and suggestions on how to promote equal rights with such anger, hatred, and personalized attacks. Okay, let me mansplain this for you. If a feminist vilifies all males, based on nothing more than their gender, and some men object, then their mere objection is proof that they are misogynistic shitlords. In other words, if you don't agree with me that you are a cunt, then that's proof that you are a cunt. You've got to love feminist logic. Anyway, that's it for another episode, folks, so always remember. Until next time, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
I don't know why you're getting all upset at something that's just a movie. It's not like they're trying to threaten to rape you personally. Why is it that black people can drop the N-bomb, but white people can't effing say it?
Dude, you totally can't just sit there and blame white people for racism in this country. That's, like, not cool. All lives matter!
Dude, you stupid fucking cunt. Oh my god, you're like so fat and shit. Suck my dick. I don't
understand why you're blocking me. I mean, like, freedom of speech, and I have the right to, like, write whatever I want and say shit and such. Feminazi censorship! I don't understand why you're getting so offended over, like, the name of the Washington football team. I'm, like, 1/16 Native American, and it doesn't offend me. Our forefathers warned about this cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism. Natural Marxismos.
Why doesn't anybody want to date me? It's not like I said anything terrible on Tinder or anything. I mean, I just like... these fucking feminazis are everywhere, man. Well, maybe I told this one chick to, like, suck my fucking dick, but, like, she ignored my man feels for 5 hours, okay? You can't expect me to not retaliate. Big lifestyle. You know what? This government is too fucking large, okay? It's, like, all over the place, and everybody's, like, getting in my fucking business, and fucking Obama needs to keep his fucking nose out of my goddamn business. We should be allowed to have guns to defend ourselves, okay? You know, people might come out like freaking animals, like out of nowhere. I mean, for example, George Zimmerman, I mean, that guy's life was at risk. I mean, sure, he sought out the trouble and was actually provoking it, but I mean, like, that kid was taller than he was. What do you mean black people were defending themselves in Ferguson against the attacks of the state? Walking around with guns defending themselves on freaking American territory against attacks from the state. They can't do that. They have to obey the law. Police lives matter!